Hey y'all, how you doing? Connor here. I don't know if you've noticed for yourself, but like there's lots of stories that we have, and the story changes over time. You tell stories differently about yourself and your experiences as you evolve. And I think that's fascinating to watch. So I haven't really told this story in a while. Thought I'd go through just a gentle timeline of jobs that I've had, kind of careers and the things that I've made money from, and then sort of land with like, what's my ultimate vision for myself. So my parents bought a house in California in the 70s in the 60s. And we moved out of that house when I was 3, and they really thought they were gonna sell it. Given the market at the time, it just didn't make sense, and so they held on to it, and it's great that they did. And they rented it out. So we lived about 50 minutes, about an hour away, and my dad would go down there every weekend and clean up the house and take care of the house and stuff. Sometimes my mom would come down for elements of it, but it was mostly my dad's jam. Not every weekend, but plenty of weekends I would go down there with him, and he would pay me, a small amount of money, but it felt like a lot at the time, and I would mow the lawn or help him sweep up the curb or, just various things. Sometimes we would do some painting project, or there was this really beautiful hedge for a long time. It's not there anymore, but there's this beautiful hedge that acted as sort of a fence, and he would trim that, every month or a couple of weeks, I'm not really sure, and we would bag it all up. So that was kind of like my first job, and I think the connection with labor and skill there just has always stuck with me. I've loved that type of work, whether it's yard work or housework or building something. I'm just really like, I've got that in my bones, and my dad's definitely oriented in that way too. He was always working on a car or working on a project in the house, building something, repairing something. So yeah, I definitely got that from my dad, and I love that as a skill. And then when I was in 6th grade, I'm pretty sure it was 6th grade, might have even been 5th grade. Dang, was it 5th grade? Hard to remember, right? But somewhere around there, I had this teacher who said, if you write poetry, you will get extra credit for writing poetry. I don't think it was the extra credit thing that really got me. It was the invitation to write that got me. And I just started writing like crazy. I mean, I would bring her like 10 poems in one go, like show up with all these poems. And I'm sure that they were pretty, not very good poems, but like that's not very common, I think, for a 5th grade, 6th grade, kid to do. I just got really freaking passionate about it. Never went away, basically. I just kept writing. And when I was a freshman in high school, there was a student there who had gone to this program called CISA. And it was for high schoolers who were interested in some element of the arts. And there was an application process and all that stuff. So I got approved to go, and it was for a month, and you moved onto this campus. It's a college campus in Valencia, and it was just an absolute life-changing experience. It's where I met my future wife and eventually ex-wife, but we're still super close friends in writing class. And I just decided, at that time, like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I'm going to be a poet. And I remember shortly after that, I kind of left school. I think I finished my sophomore year, and then I just told my parents, like, I don't want to go back to high school. And I was kind of like I imagine as a parent, I was a tough kid at that stage of my life to manage or even to help guide. I was very independent. I was very like, I'm gonna do what I wanna do, and no one's gonna tell me otherwise. Yeah, so I did this online high school. I wrote a lot. I did a lot of artwork, mostly writing. And then I also got hired as a breakfast server, I suppose you'd say, at this fancy hotel in a town next door to where I grew up. And I did that for a while until I was promoted to bellhop, and then I did bellhop for a while. And eventually my girlfriend at the time, eventually wife, eventually ex-wife, she was living in LA. We were like 2 hours apart. She got accepted to this college for high school students to start college early if you were super smart and gifted and all this stuff. But it was in Massachusetts, and she just said, like, I think you should come with me. And I was like, cool, I'm gonna come. And I told my parents I'm gonna go, and they were like, no, you can't go. And I was like, well, I'm going anyway. And that's what happened. I left over the summer of that coming year. So I was 17, and I was in California. I moved across the United States to Massachusetts. Showed up in Massachusetts, didn't know anything about Massachusetts. And the college was in Great Barrington, which if you've ever been, it's a pretty small little town. There's not a whole lot going on. We lived in a hotel for 7 days. I found a bedroom to rent, which at the time I think was like $350, which for that area was really, really good. Lived in this bedroom that was right in town. And I got hired at the co-op right away, like went in there, got a job, boom. I met someone in the coffee shop who said, I know this farmer who's hiring, and you might want to check that out. I just kind of fell in love with that type of work. So I quit on the co-op after like 2 days, and I went and worked for this guy in Sheffield, harvesting lettuce. And I harvested lettuce for 3 seasons. And during the off seasons, when the fields were covered in snow, I worked at this coffee shop. And then we moved a little more, still in Western Mass, but a little more center into the Amherst area. And we both went to the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. And I was getting a degree in history because my idea was I had a really terrible time in high school. I hated it so much. And I envisioned myself becoming a teacher in high school that could be like, not make high school okay, but maybe to offer something to those kids, to the ones that were like me, because not everyone hates high school, right? But to the ones that were like me, that just like hated it and didn't want to be there and felt like no one understood them, that I could offer them something. And I felt like history would give me the greatest amount of potential influence, because there's a curriculum that you have to follow, but you can put in philosophy in there. So that was kind of like my vision. And then I got hired to do like apartment maintenance, renovation type stuff with this guy who owned a bunch of houses in the area and rented them all to college kids. And eventually through that process, I learned how to paint really, really well, interior and exterior. And I just thought like, man, this guy's paying me like $10 an hour. I should just do my own thing, paint on my own and make money. So I started a painting company that was just myself. And that was sort of my first experience in entrepreneurship. So I started a painting company, and I would do other things like, simple renovations and fixing things and stuff like that. And then my wife at the time was interested in becoming a lawyer, and she got accepted into Rutgers, which is in Newark, New Jersey. So we moved down there. I came across this ad that said, basically, if you have a truck, a trailer, and tools, give us a call. So I called up this company, and I got an interview. And this was around 2008, right when all the housing market collapse stuff was happening. The mortgage crisis was happening big time. And this company was called a property preservation company. And that's just a fancy term for you work for the banks, taking care of all their foreclosures. So they were a contractor for the bank. They hired me as a subcontractor. So I all of a sudden was thrown into this crazy weird job where I would show up and again, this was in the heart of Jersey City Heights. I was doing most of my work in Newark, in Elizabeth, Linden, some of the Oranges. There's like a, you know, I don't know how it is now, but back in 2008, those towns were serious business, man. Like just driving through those towns was a little bit sketchy, let alone going to houses that were boarded up, broken into, drug addicts living in there, people selling drugs out of there. You know, one of the contractors I worked with found a dead body in one of the houses. He called the cops, and the cops came, and they were like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm working, you know, for this bank, blah blah." They're like, "No, what are you doing here? We don't even come here." And so he had to get a police escort anytime he'd go to that house. So it was weird. It was crazy. I saw some insane things. I'd never seen a crack vial before in my life. I saw thousands and thousands and thousands of crack vials. So I got these really bizarre jobs that I would have never have had the opportunity to do. I also got some really cool things like, you know, replumbing an entire house because somebody stole all the copper out of it to take to the scrapyard. Doing electrical jobs that like I had no, like I shouldn't have been hired to do, but they paid me to do it. It was just it was like the wild, wild west at that time. There were so many foreclosures. The banks could not handle it. They were hiring people who should not have been hired in order to take care of these houses. And so I got the opportunity to learn a lot, not only about home repair, but also about running a business. And it was tough, man. I worked myself to the bone. I really, really did. And I think in part, it was the job, and in part it was like I was relatively underdeveloped emotionally. I hadn't learned about self-awareness or self-growth or like how to look at some of my past and be like, wow, you know, because of this thing, I'm kind of like this, and I wonder if I want to be that way. You know, is there anything I can do about that? I was just living day to day, working 70, 80 hours a week, making, you know, on paper, it looked like I was making a lot of money, but I was spending a ton of money to make these jobs happen. So at the end of the day, I had nothing to show for it except some developing skills in how to care for a house. But I was deteriorating emotionally and physically, just drinking like nobody's business. I mean, I would be drinking on the job. Towards the end of the day, I'd come home, get drunk, wake up in the morning super hungover, go work, start drinking again, and that was every day for me. Rarely took a day off. Eventually it just became very clear like there's a rupture in my relationship with my wife at the time, and although I didn't want it at the time, she separated from me. And looking back, you know, it was really good that we did that. We were just kids, you know, even though we were 28 when that happened. We got together when we were 16. We didn't have a lot of emotional development during that time. And so in a way, I was still kind of like 16 in certain ways, even though I was 28. So, you know, at that time, I've shared this part of my journey before. I just kind of stopped everything, and I changed everything about my life. I stopped doing that work, and I started looking at myself, and I was like, dang, dude, you're kind of a mess. You need to get yourself together, and not really sure how to do that. So over time, I learned how to take care of myself, and I learned about self-care. I eventually stumbled upon internal family systems therapy, started doing that work on myself, changed my life, and I decided to spend all the money I had to get trained in it. And from that training, I decided I want to work with people. And I couldn't work with them as a licensed therapist, but I could work with them as a coach using IFS. And that's what I did for a number of years and really developed my skills as an IFS practitioner. That kind of brings us up to today, where, you know, I do one-on-one coaching with people. I use IFS as a backdrop, but I do so many more things. I'm really into consistent action, using consistent action to change patterns and to develop, because that's what I see as the most powerful thing that we can do for ourselves, is doing something regularly that's simple, that we can do, that's replicable. That's a hard word to say. Replicable. and changing patterns and changing narratives and like looking at our past, yeah, but also let's do something right now to make things happen and feel good about ourselves. So yeah, over time, man, now I've got this IFS site, internalfamilysystems.org. I've got some awesome programs there. I'm all about helping people like empower themselves and to do this work for yourself. And yes, to get outside support, but ultimately at the end of that outside support, you should know how to that much better do it yourself, not be dependent on that outside support. That's kind of my goal. So I've got this whole IFS YouTube channel. I've got this website. And then I've got my one-on-one coaching I do with people, and I love that work. And now I've just started teaching people how to be effective coaches, and that's called the Self-Leadership Coaching Academy. And we're right in the middle of the first offering I've ever made. Got 10 people in the course. Everyone's awesome. They're doing a great job. I love that type of work. So that leads me to like, well, what do I ultimately really want? I think since I was like in my early 20s, I knew I wanted to be a father, and I am. I'm a father to an amazing 4-year-old boy, and he's just, that's like, I feel, I feel speechless about how fulfilling that is for me. It might not be for everyone, but for me, it's like, that's my primary jam for sure. And I want more kids. And so fatherhood is obviously going to be like, that's going to be me the rest of my life. I'm going to be a father, and that's huge. And I love the one-on-one work that I do as a coach, and I love group work. I love being able to share something that impacts someone else, that could potentially change their life in a positive way forever. Like that's just incredible. I also love business. Like I love making money, coming up with ideas of how to make money, and doing it in a really like authentic and morally, ethically aligned way. Like that's pretty badass. So I love that stuff. I also love houses, and I would love to get to the point where, I could have a rental property just like my dad did, and just take care of that property and have my own house. So that definitely feels like it's in the future for me, in the cards for me. Ultimately, man, I still have that childhood dream of being a poet, being a writer. And I still write, but not as much as parts of me definitely desire to. I took the time to write a book. Maybe you know of it, you probably don't. It's called The Smell of Breath. And it was the first time that I just dedicated a lot of time to writing. And I just came up with this concept, and I made it happen. And I feel so proud of that. I don't really mind too much if people read my writing and they're just like, I don't like that. I have like a deep knowing that it's good, and it doesn't need to be good for anyone else. Like, I know it's good, and I love it. I love my writing, I love that. And that's like a really powerful place of confidence, and sort of relaxation, that like I don't really need outside validation. I validate myself as a writer. I have a long-standing relationship with myself as a writer and a deep connection with it. So I wrote this book back in like 2018, maybe 2019. And I just am so grateful that I did it, that I have something, that exists, that you can buy. You can go to Amazon and you can look up that title and you can buy that book. But I want to do so much more in that area. And some of you might know, I also do artwork, and I do love doing artwork. I sold artwork for a couple of years. I was really consistent doing artwork, and I love that too. But writing is really, really where my deep longing, my deep passion is. If you stick with me long enough, I think that's going to be the next phase. And I've thought about it. I thought about it realistically, and like when could that be? Coming more into the center focus. And I think probably like somewhere like 5 years. Yeah, I'm excited about that. And it's nice, again, it's nice to share that story. Like, this has been true for me since I was 15, maybe even younger, and it's never gone away. Thanks for letting me share. Thanks for being here. Yeah, I love your comments. For those of you, again, there's a couple of things I mentioned if you didn't know, might be interesting for you. The internal family systems stuff, I'll put those links in the description box. Definitely check out the YouTube channel. There's great content there. I've got my book, I'll link that too. You're welcome to buy it. It's totally a particular way of writing. It's definitely not going to appeal to everyone. I'll just say that right now. Yeah, and the Self-Leadership Coaching Academy, man, if you're interested in developing yourself as a coach, whether you're coaching right now or just have an interest in it, I'll put the link to that as well. You can't get into this class, but I'm going to be running it again. There's a video you can watch and see if the program would make sense for you, and then you can follow the link and get on the wait list. All right, so much love to you. Hope you have a beautiful day. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.